So there is this fella who he considers himself a sound healer. And he asks a Buddhist nun if the benefits of meditation are in the quiet of the silence. And she giggles for a moment and she says, but the silence can be thunderous. It's like that, isn't it? Today I wanted to kind of unpack the qualities of silence. And it's so interesting because we can just take one step back 5 minutes ago and just be aware and sense that quality of silence that we just experienced. And of course, it's going to be different for everyone. I had a friend who visited us here at Temple Buddhist Center. He's from out of state. And he came, it was his first experience with meditation and a sangha. And he came and he sat through a service. And at the end, he approached me and just had this look on his face. And he's like, I have never, ever experienced silence like that before. And we continued talking a little bit. And some of the things that he reported was that the silence that he'd experienced was silence alone. But this was silence in a group of 45 or 50 people. So right there, we could begin with a couple qualities of silence. The quality of silence alone and the quality of silence in sangha or in community. I had another friend report about how they like to spend silent time in nature, which, you know, interestingly enough, if you're out in nature, it's hardly silent, but I understand the point that he was making, that quality that the silence in nature can bring. It's a deeper connection with nature itself. There is the silence that we know. There's a quality, that familiar old friend silence, but then there's new silence. There's the experience of a new kind of or type of silence. I recently had the experience of getting triggered by my mother. She and I were out recently, in the last week, doing estate planning, visiting various locations. We visited the Kansas City Center for the Cremation Center of Kansas City, I believe they call it, taking care of final preparations for cremation. We visited several lawyers working on estate planning and powers of attorney in medical affairs, banking affairs, you need a power of attorney for all kinds of affairs, it seems, these days. And in the course of one of our interactions with one of the lawyers, we had a disagreement. We argued, I got triggered, and the drive home was an interesting silence. There was a quality to the silence. So here we can begin to explore or unpack the quality of silence when there's an agitated aspect to it, a pain to it, a suffering to it. And of course, we could go on all morning talking about all the many qualities of silence. And if I asked for volunteers, I would probably get reports of as many different qualities of silence as there are moments or beings in it. But here is the trick. There is human silence and there is spiritual silence. Just like there is human love and there is love with a capital L, divine love, unconditional love. Just like Boling's has a menu for you, us Americans, and they have a completely different menu for native Chinese. It's true. And unless you can read Chinese, you can't order from it. And if you did order from it, because I had a friend order for me from it, you're not going to like that food because it's not full of salt, fat, and sugar. More palatable to the Western tongue. But it was an eye-opener for me. Made me realize that it's kind of a paradigm shift. Wow. The spiritual silence that I'm talking about in the Buddhist practice is called the noble silence. In the Pali Canon, noble silence is more of an internal silence. I know that here in the West, we're used to when we hear noble silence, that means no talking. But in the Pali Canon, noble silence is of the same meaning as the jhana states. The first jhana or jhanic state, the stilling of directed thought and evaluations or judgment. And the second jhanic state, the pleasure born of concentration, a unified awareness, an internal assurance. So it is much more of an internal state of being, this silence that I speak of now. This silence, when we take the one seat and we enter into stillness and then noble silence, it is about cultivating a beingness. And the trap is being overly occupied with the meditation itself and or its qualities. The gift of meditation and subsequently silence, those gifts arise in the daily activities of life, not the judgmentalism that arises on the cushion. The presence of being on the cushion begins to permeate our doingness, the doing of everyday life, the shopping, the typing, the running, the going, the getting. It's not so much the moment that we spend in stillness and in silence and in meditation, but it's what that does for us in the other aspects of our lives. It is the bringing of being into the doing. And so, as a part of our meditation, when we're involved with judging the meditation, expecting it to be a certain way, wanting it to be silent or quiet or peaceful or floating 2 inches above the cushion itself, It's all of that dialogue that simply allows us to see and be present with the nature of mind. It's not about the meditation at all. The silence and the meditation will inform the rest of our lives, and it doesn't take long. The invitation, therefore, is not to seek a cessation of sensory input. Good luck trying to quiet the world. But the invitation is to go deeper, to find the stillness and the silence within, to find and rest in the noble silence. If you want to silence the world, then your meditation might look like this. And of course, what we know is that's impermanent. That will last only as long as the batteries in your new noise-canceling Bose headphones, which, by the way, are the hottest seller these days on Amazon. I wonder why. Could it be that folks are feeling a lack of silence in their lives? Oh, I can do that now. I just realized now that I've grown my beard out, I can actually do that. A couple of months ago, I'd do this and there's nothing there. As a famous teacher once said, it's not that you want so much. It's that you want so little. So let's go back for just a moment now and re-examine the earlier qualities of silence. The silence that I spoke about a few moments ago, that silence that we know, that familiar silence. With deeper inspection, you will recognize as attachment to a way of meditating, or a way of being. The silence that is new, exciting. Wow, I never had this kind of silence before. Could be the mind making comparisons with this meditation or this meditation and this silence. So it's actually accessing the past, which, if you remember, the Buddha said there's only 2 days a year that are worthless, yesterday and tomorrow. The silence that is alone is actually an identification with form. In consciousness, we are never alone. The silence that I spoke about in nature, as long as there are spaces of no thought, no mind, no labels, no judgments, then there can be a deep sense of connection as the great silent space that holds all of nature also holds you. And there's a deep sense of connection with that. For me, it's the same in Sangha. The quality of silence in Sangha, for me, matches the quality of silence in nature. It's a deep sense of connection. And as for my agitated silence, what a wonderful invitation for inspection, for examination, for going deeper. So I went home that night and I took the one seat And what I realized was that her frustration was with her inability to control her outer affairs, her administrative affairs, and the things that she normally was so adept at through all of her life, a fiercely independent woman. And for me, it was the frustration, the agitation of the lack of control to control her descent into senility and her impending death. And so the argument was born from that, not from some little disagreement about this, that, or the other. Arguments are seldom about the thing that you're arguing about. So the invitation today is to cultivate noble silence, the clarity of silence, because we seek truth, not quiet. We seek truth, not happiness. Happiness and silence arise from clarity of truth of the moment. You can't get them. You can't manufacture them. You can't make them happen. They arise when we see the truth of the moment, the agitation during the meditation, the recurring thoughts. When we see how those impact our meditation, we can begin to see truth. We can begin to peel away the attachments to things being a certain way. We can become incredibly open to life, to all sensory input from all levels. And in doing so, can realize what Jesus himself said was the peace that passeth all understanding, and what the Buddha instructs us to find the noble silence. I'd like to conclude with an excerpt from a poem by Elaine Maria Upton. So I invite you to take a deep breath. Close your eyes and see if you can experience the quality of the silence between these words. Silence is the healer dreaming the plant, the drummer drumming the dream. It is the lover's exhausted fall into sleep. It is the call of morning birds. Silence is God's beat tapping every heart. Silence is a word, a hope, a candle lighting the window of home. Silence is everything, renewing sleep of earth, the cleansing dream of water, the purifying rage of fire, the soaring and spiraling flight of air. It is all things dissolved into no thing. Silence is with you always. The presence of I am.